and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of the First Skills Podcast. This is a podcast in which we invite people with achievements from the First Skills Club or outside the First Skills Club. And during the previous episode, we have invited someone from the space industry, and this is the same for today's episode. Welcome, Mrs. Rania Toukebri. We are so proud to have you in here. Mrs. Rania is a space engineer, a Tunisian space engineer, and also the regional coordinator of Space Generation Advisory Council. Welcome to the First Skills Podcast and to the First Skills Club as well.
Thank you so much.
So, if we could begin by introducing yourself to the audience watching us, how did Ms. Rania go from the one in Tunis to this career right now you have in the EU, in an African and global scale?
Well, everything started just a few years ago. I didn't have a really long career in space. So I started by working, or let's say starting with small projects in the university, so with INSAT University in Tunis, where I got an engineering diploma in instrumentation and electronics with them. So and then for my graduation project I made the CubeSat, a nanosatellite for 10 centimeter cube, and that was not with them, that was with the University of PGV of France. Of course with other universities, because it's like a constellation of CubeSats, so I didn't work with one university but it was with several ones. So that was kind of my first main space project. And from that, I decided to work really specifically for space applications, where I started with some other small projects in the meanwhile, and I studied a master degree in embedded systems and development and software development based for space applications. Yeah, and then I continued working on that, and I worked on some EU projects. I say EU project because it was for the ESA project, so for the European Space Agency, and for DLR, German Space Agency, and so. And then I started working for DSC Aerospace and with the projects with Airbus Defence and Space for ESA projects, the same. So that's
that is
everything.
Really interesting.
Well, right now you are the Space Generation Advisory Council regional coordinator.
Yeah.
What is that exactly? What do you do, and what's the goal of this organization?
Yeah, so the Space Generation Advisory Council would be very interesting for the First Space Club, by the way. And that's why I'm here as well. So this is an organization that is affected to the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. Their main goal is basically to follow the work of this UNOSA, what I call the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. This is UNOSA. So we will call it like that because it's too long. So it follows the work of UNOSA. You know, it's affected the United Nations. So when we say UN, we say a lot of laws and a lot of things, theoretical things. So we try to see things practically speaking. And this should be from the down to the top, which means from universities and students, and clubs like you, for example, going up to the institutions and then governments and the big organizations. So we try to apply what we have, programs that they propose, and we try to follow and see what is happening around. And this should be for basically all the countries in the world. Not all of them, of course, but mainly most of them. And I started first by being a national point of contact of Tunisia, even if Tunisia doesn't have any space applications in the beginning. So I was the national point of contact for 4 years, and then last June I was elected as regional coordinator of Africa.
Congrats.
One more thing is that this organization has a seat in the Committee of Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. This is normally only for some countries and some big organizations and some people that are kind of stakeholders for the space field, okay, we are just observers, but this is very important. So if you want to transmit any information or if you have any recommendation, the SGC can transport it to the UN Big Committee for Space. This is the main role. Yeah.
Have there been any activities or events to encourage the youth into developing the space culture in our country or in Africa? Are there any events that have been made already?
Okay. Unfortunately, now I'm just the regional point of the regional coordinator. So I should have I cannot be very into only Tunisia space.
Yes.
I should be fair enough to deal with everybody at the same time. So I'm saying that because recently, last month, we had a workshop in Ethiopia because they launched their first satellite. They want to make the space applications famous in their country. So that was that workshop. That was a space generation workshop in Ethiopia. We had also others in South Africa. I think we will have others I propose Tunisia, just if they will accept it. Maybe in Egypt. There was some events in Marrakesh last April. So there are a lot of events that can be good, but we just don't hear about it. That's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And can we see even real impact on not only, let's say, the professionals and the students, but also on people in general in spreading this culture, so that when the time is ready for Tunisia and other developing countries in Africa to adapt the space industry field, people can be ready and are also encouraging this field to be successful?
Yes, this is a very good question, because it is now important to talk about what we call the space society. The space society, what I call it as spheres that are from small sphere to big one. So the small one, you can find the experts and the persons that make some researches on space technology.
Are actually creating
scientists.
and working.
Exactly, the main center of the science and space and space technology in general. Then there are the engineers and people that have technologies that are linked to space. Then you can find the institutions. Then you can find the I call the stakeholders, or the people that have the main power or decision to take the decisions in their countries. And then we can find them the common people, the normal people. This is what we try to do, is that to make the communication into all these spheres happening all the time. So these spheres should communicate all the time with each other. So like that, we can transfer from the main one to the big space society, the common persons, what we call.
We can have even if we have some new ideas from people in clubs or from young people.
Exactly.
Even in schools or in universities, they can transmit their knowledge or their creations to the experts in the fields who can make the project a reality and make it so that the project can have benefit for humanity or for the space industry in the entire country or globe. Or
exactly, that's what I said. That's exactly what we want. So we want to make the communication happen between all these spheres. It's important because now if we don't have only space technology like satellites and rockets, there are also doctors that are working for space applications. And other persons, there are persons working for food,
and
for
farmers,
space.
yes.
Yeah, so there is a big diversity in this field, and everybody can give suggestions and recommendations. And so, especially people like young youth, university and so.
Concerning the activities, or let's say the use of space industry in all the different fields and domains, it's mentioned there's a sentence mentioned in the website that I liked. It says that the big, let's say, space industry focuses on making Mars like Earth, but here especially in Africa, it's more like making Earth not seem like Mars. This reminded me of the uses of, let's say, space industry, which can have a really clear impact, especially in Africa, because it faces a lot of problems and space can provide a lot of solutions. What are these solutions that space can provide?
Okay, this is also a very good question as well.
Okay.
But there are some words that are missing to your question. So if you ask me this, you tell me what can space bring to the world. I can give you some answers. For example, I can tell you that some satellites are used to work on to track the forests in Earth. So we try to save Earth from deforestation, for example.
Okay.
There are some others that are making researches. Okay, I found this interesting. Maybe others I don't. To find like twin of Earth. I found
Twin.
this. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Or to I don't know, to find if there are possibilities of life in Mars or things like that. I think this is very important because I know how important this is for the humanity in the next 50 years. If you ask me your same question in Africa, I will tell you there are different needs and different solutions that space can bring. In Africa, we talk mainly about sustainable development goals. The sustainable development goals is what we call SDG in the UN. So these are basic things for life, like poverty, like food,
Water.
like water, institutions, like education,
Mhm.
exactly,
Health.
equality, gender, health. These are all that space can really provide. I talked yesterday about like how to use space for saving, for example, Ghana from the golds, the people that are stealing gold from the
Mhm.
you know
The miners.
the miners, yes.
Mhm.
So they are using satellite for that reason. This is just a very simple
Mhm.
example about this. And of course, there are other satellites that are used for tracking the water, the level of water, and so in the South Africa,
Okay.
and others like for really main basic reasons for life.
Mhm. Well, this seems interesting. Well, in Africa we have some leading countries. You have already mentioned
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, South Africa.
Mhm.
There's Nigeria, Algeria, Egypt. There's Rwanda lately. Space in Tunisia hasn't had its boost yet, and if it had, it doesn't seem as if people have heard about it. What can you tell us about space in Tunisia, its future, maybe what's happening right now, any efforts to add some legislations to facilitate the entering of space industry into Tunisia?
Mhm. So in Tunisia, we have big capacity. Big human capacity outside of Tunisia.
Okay.
And we have also the same inside of Tunisia. Like for example, I call the First Kids Club. For me, it's like a big capacity. You are able to build a lot of things.
Mhm.
So I'm talking first about people that are outside of Tunisia because they know about space applications. So if you give them to make a first project as a CubeSat, they are able to provide the main points of this project, the main of the project, or how to do it, what are the needed technologies, and so. Here, for example, you have good knowledge about electronics, embedded systems, things like that, but not for space applications. So here we just need to put these people together. We have to make what we call the capacity building, which is like people that know about space should inform others that don't know about it.
Yeah.
And like that we can have benefit from all of us.
Okay.
What we have now is that recently we have groups of people that are interested in space, like what Agios is doing. I think you know about Agios.
Yes.
Yes.
And so Agios is mainly doing that now. So we are trying to bring
To reach as many people.
to
as
reach
possible.
yes like a lot of persons, and to try to see. Of course, for me it's important to know to who to go first.
Mhm.
So you don't have to go to everybody first. You have just to go to persons that can do things, and then of course, depending on the type of message you gonna transmit,
Mhm.
you can transfer your knowledge from very technical things to very abstract things and very normal things for common persons.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
You are today in the First Kiss Club, a guest in the First Kiss podcast, and also you are going to have a presentation. What's the schedule of today? What are you gonna show the mentees who are gonna assist today on this conference? Let's say.
Okay. I'm gonna talk. Okay, I'm kind of expert. I call myself expert, but I'm not. It's like I'm just working for 3-4 years, so I'm not so
Mhm.
good in this. I'm called compared to other experts. I have 20 years of experience.
Okay.
So I worked up to now on 6 missions, 6 projects, which are satellites. So the main topic, the main concern would be on that. So, and the ones that were for me kind of success because I could do good things for some missions. And then I'm gonna talk about one specific project for me, which is a Jupiter satellite. I think you will be very interested in that. And I mentioned as well another project, which is a CubeSat, because I know that you are interested in CubeSats. And then there will be one of the challenges you talked about. You meant that Mr. Ahmed Al-Fadel mentioned before, and AGOS want to work with you on that. So one of these challenges that I want to talk about is the space debris. So I want to talk how important the topic is now, and this is not really something that we should start talking about this, because it's very important and it's very dangerous, and we should be aware about this, how dangerous it is, and everybody, like not only Tunisia.
Yeah, and the mentees in First Kiss Club have already started on projects creating ideas to avoid the space debris problem, or decrease the amount of space debris there is. Some of them are trying to prototype some satellites or some not Mars rovers, but rovers that can land on comets, for example. What advice can you give to those mentees to avoid falling in the theoretical part of the work, and putting the real effort in creating the project itself? Because maybe they will plan missions to other planets or to comets, but they don't know how to actually build the rover, for example, or the CubeSat that they are going to make. What kind of knowledge they need, or what advice can you give to them?
Okay. First of all, I want to talk about this topic not from technological point of view, and I did it on purpose. So I will not first talk about what to use in order to avoid it. I will first talk how dangerous it is and what is now happening, because now technologies are changing. So there was some solutions like in the last 10 years about space debris. Today we have 10 more happening. So I'm going to also mention what is happening now. So what kind of tools they are using. I'm mentioning tools because it's our kind of equipment that are using in satellites or in other spacecrafts in order to track the space debris. And it's also important to know that these CubeSats or these satellites or spacecrafts are not more than a normal robot. Its mission is to track these space debris and just to either collect them and put them outside of the orbit, or just take them and put them down to Earth or whatever. So this is, I also want to focus on this because we can do this on Earth on just any kind of simple things for any kind of pollution. I don't know, just for paper, for example. You can just use it for paper now and see how it is happening, then apply it later for satellites, for big space debris. I mean, this what you have to use for space on satellites is not as important as you knowing what is in there and how to do things in a very simple way. Of course, and it's very important to know what are the other European and American institutions and companies are doing and studying now. This, of course, we will talk about it, and what technologies they are using and how they are trying to think about it. And by the way, they are still missing a lot of things, and they are still making a lot of researches on this topic. So we are not we are up to date for now. So
we're not alone.
And fortunately for one topic. So
let's sum everything up. The last question I wanna ask you about is being a female in the technological field. Let's say, how's that? Did you face any hardships? Is there for example, did you really remark some gender inequality, let's say, in the domain of space industry and science and STEM in general? How different are, let's say, Tunisia and people in there, all of this all together?
Okay, so the equality gender. This is not only applied, like it's not only in space applications. It's everywhere. It's all over the world, not only in Tunisia as well. In the beginning, I don't know. I just felt like people are not interested in space first. Then they said that engineering is not for girls, which is normal. Then they said that space is not for girls as well. And then when I started my project, I was the only female, of course the only African, and the only Arab.
Okay.
So it was
Tunisian.
the minorities in the same person. That was really good.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a problem because I was always respected. I didn't work in Tunisia. I cannot tell you that. I think I would be respected as well. So I was always respected because I was like working and trying to I won't say show myself, but like I was always trying to bring some inputs, to bring something, to do something. So the first idea of being just a female that cannot do things was disappeared in the first month. So I think we don't have to focus on this. We have just to focus on our goals. I didn't care at all. So I just wanted to work on space, and I worked on space even if I'm like the only female in the big lab of 30 men or 40 men. So it's
Yeah, but we also like to encourage the girls to get involved in the STEM fields and engineering. As you know, girls in these fields are like the number of girls are much less than boys in space, in engineering, in all these domains. So we are really trying to encourage the young girls or women through programs and through events we even organize in our club to give equal chances to everybody and to encourage all the all the youth into developing themselves and creating projects, creating ideas, and hopefully being leaders in these STEM fields.
Yes, so I think you know that I am among the women in aerospace in Europe.
Yes.
So this is also an organization that is very active, and it's always everywhere in all the kind of events, and it's mainly focusing on that. So we are trying basically to say to other girls, so if you want to do things related to engineering and space, don't be afraid or don't try to focus on these judgment or
barriers.
This is because it won't help you. It will just bring you down, which is really stupid. Sorry, but yeah, and you will lose time. This is stupid. I'm sorry to say it. So this is mainly what we should do. We should of course encourage each other, and of course we should always show them people that are succeeding in this field, the women that are succeeding in this field, saying and just simply that we can do it as well. I won't say as well because we can do it first, because women sometimes can be a bit more hard worker and smart at the same time.
Yeah.
It's very known because men are usually more, how can I say, passionate and smart, not really hard worker like women and like girls, and not disciplined as well, by the way. Women can handle a lot of constraints more than men. This is really known everywhere, so that's why I say women should also be leaders in this field. Yeah, and by the way, the president of the UNOSA is a woman, Simonetta Di Pipo. Yeah.
Great. That's great.
Well, such powerful messages in this episode. Any last thing that you want to say to everyone watching us, and especially to kids and girls who are interested in STEM and in space specifically?
It's the same thing. So I will also say it to guys as well as to boys. So if you want to do something like for space, just you don't have to hear anybody. Just do it. You don't have to think twice. If you are of course passionate, if you want to do it, just through yourself, because it's really very very passionate. It's very interesting. It will give you the power to continue working every day. It's not just a field to just you spend 8 hours and go back home. Yeah, so this is what I suggest guys to do.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Miss Rania. We were very glad to have you today in the First Kiss podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for staying up with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. This was Slim Majdu with you, as well as my co-host today, Simi Masmoudi. Thank you very much, and see you in another episode in the First Kiss podcast. And goodbye.